Amazing discovery. Lone rancher rescued an abandoned bride, unexpectedly revealing her last hope. Jake straightened his back as he rode along the dirt road separating his cattle from the calming embrace of wide-open plains. The Wyoming sun cast an unforgiving glare off the horizon, mirroring the isolation that twisted around his chest. He spotted her then, a figure crumpled against the roadside, a wedding dress dirty and torn, the fabric a stark white against the brown earth. His heart raced, not from the thrill of the find but from a swirling dread. She was someone's bride after all, left behind as if disposable. He dismounted, hesitation clawing at him. The whispers of his past echoed in his mind. Stay focused. Stay distant. But the sight of her tear-streaked face pierced his reservations. He couldn't leave her there. How could he? So he knelt beside her, uncertainty mixing with something deeper, more primal. Would this fleeting moment of connection unearth the loneliness he so carefully buried? Upon taking her back to the ranch, Sophie spoke with a tremulous voice, sharing dreams of veterinary school. As she talked about horses, about the life she wanted but never had, Jake felt a familiar longing knit into each word. The ache for a chance, for belonging. Surrounded by fields and cattle that demanded his every ounce of attention, he felt the weight of his own existence in stark relief against her aspirations. Could a man like him offer a place in a world that seemed so far removed from her comfort? Days turned into nights filled with discussions under the stars, yet Jake was plagued by self-doubt. He worked harder on the ranch, his body tense with fear of her leaving him behind as she found a way toward her dreams. Sophie's laughter rang through the air like a melody, stirring something deep within him. But could he ever be enough? His rugged life was filled with dirt and toil, nothing like the world she had dreamed of, where aspirations blossomed unhindered by the harsh realities of life. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Everything shifted when the news came in, a scholarship that Sophie could only dream of. The chance echoed in Jake's mind like a taunt. It was an opportunity that could pull her away, launching her into a bright future. He watched her carefully, tension coiling tightly in his chest as he witnessed her inner turmoil. Did she feel the same pull of gravity toward the life she once dreamed of? Or was she torn between his rugged permanence and her fleeting future? Each smile he shared with her now felt like a dagger, reminding him of what would be lost if she took flight. They stood at a crossroads, layered under the intense weight of unspoken words. Sophie opened her mouth, yet the conversation crumbled into silence, pregnant with anguish. As Jake wrestled with his own heartbreak, she recoiled into a sadness he could neither understand nor alleviate. Just as she took a breath to speak, the phone rang, ushering in unexpected news. Their world shifted, leaving Jake grasping at hope. Would her unwavering ambition crush the tender bond they had formed, or reveal the untapped strength within them both? The future felt precarious, standing on the cusp of dreams and fears, leaving Jake to wonder, was he destined for solitude after all? The following morning, Jake woke to the sharp rooster's call that sliced through his restless dreams. He lay in bed for a moment, staring at the beams of sunlight that streaked through the window, illuminating the dust motes suspended in the air. The scholarship announcement echoed in his thoughts, a reminder of how precarious the balance between their lives had become. Jake was no stranger to hard work, but it had always felt like a solitary battle. Now faced with Sophie's chance for a brighter future, he felt the ground shift dangerously beneath him. After forcing himself from the warmth of the covers, Jake stepped outside, taking a deep breath of the crisp morning air. Each step toward the barn felt heavier than the last, an unavoidable weight pressing down on him. The cattle lowed in the distance, their steady rhythm echoing his internal struggle. He needed to focus on the tasks at hand, But his mind was crowded with visions of Sophie packed and leaving. What if she did accept the scholarship? Would she simply walk away, chasing dreams he wouldn't be able to follow? The day unfolded in a blur of chores, but his focus was more on her absence than the cattle. Jake diligently checked the fences, the hay feedings, each task a distraction from the gnawing fear at the back of his mind. He remembered her words about the school, the passion lighting her eyes. He couldn't dismiss how much she deserved this opportunity. But amid that truth, jealousy festered within him. Could he really be supportive if it meant losing her? In a moment of boldness, he headed to the small paddock where Sophie usually spent her afternoons. He found her sitting cross-legged in the grass, sketching horses in a weathered notebook. The gentle breeze played with her hair, illuminating the determination etched on her face. He admired her, a sinewy mix of focus and ambition, and it struck him. He had to confront this nagging fear instead of letting it hollow him out from within. "Sophie," he said, his voice wavering. She looked up, surprise flashing across her features. "Hey, Jake." She closed her notebook, setting it aside as if it held more weight than just paper and pencil. "What's up?" Shifting from foot to foot, he fought to anchor himself. "I know about the scholarship." Her expression flickered with recognition, and for a fleeting moment, her smile faltered. "Yeah, No, let me finish," he interjected, heart pounding. "You have this chance. I can see how much it means to you, but do you think—" The words caught on his tongue, heavy and suffocating. "Do you think you'd really want to leave everything behind here?" Sophie met his gaze, her own turmoil reflected back at him. "I don't want to leave you, but I don't want to miss this chance either. I've never felt more alive than when I talk about my dreams." Jake inhaled deeply, fighting the urge to retreat into silence. "What if it ends up being a choice between me and your future? I don't want to hold you back." Her blue eyes widened, already searching his face for clarity. "Jake, I didn't ask you to do that. But I've never felt more alive either," he blurted, just the words spilling from him unfiltered. "Being with you makes me question what it means to truly belong. I can't hold on to you out of fear." Sophie's brow furrowed as she absorbed his confession. The air pulsed between them, thick with unspoken possibilities and choices that felt almost insurmountable. What would come next? A leap into vulnerability, or a retreat into safety? The sun dipped lower in the sky, casting long shadows that spiraled around them. They stood at the precipice of change, teetering on the edge of what they had come to know, but with tensions simmering beneath the surface. Was this the moment they would embrace uncertainty together, or would they allow it to fracture the fragile bond they had formed? Before he could voice what he truly wanted, her phone buzzed, shattering the charged atmosphere like a glass dropped onto hard ground. Who was calling this time? Jake's stomach churned. Would it be someone else pulling her away, steering her toward a life that didn't include him? As Sophie glanced at the screen, her expression shifted, leaving Jake caught between hope and dread. Sophie's eyes widened as she read the message, a mix of emotions flaring in her expression. It was a text from her mother. And while Jake couldn't hear the words, he could see the shift in her body language. Her initial surprise morphed into a cautious understanding, a resolute strength returning as she glanced back at him. "What is it?" Jake asked, urgency coiling tighter in his chest. He had pulled her into this moment, and now he felt the weight of every unspoken word tighter than ever. "I need to take this," she said, her voice slightly shaky yet firm. "I'll be right back." She stood up, tucking her phone into her back pocket. Watching her walk away, Jake grappled with the swell of anxiety that bubbled beneath the surface. Their conversation had felt like a breakthrough, yet now, in this silence, he felt vulnerability press against him like the weight of the clouds hanging low in the evening sky. He could only stand and process the ramifications of what had just happened. He paced back and forth in the paddock, running fingers through his hair, grappling with doubts. Why had he revealed so much? Hadn't he just put the ball squarely in her court? If she chose to pursue her dreams, where would that leave him? Would he even know how to navigate his own terrain without her constant presence beside him? The shadows lengthened, and sunny warmth slipped away, ceding ground to the chill of evening. The thoughts churned in his mind, each one cutting deeper, disquieting him further. But amid the confusion, a flicker of clarity broke through. This was about the both of them, not a tug of war over who claimed the larger share of the future. It was a realization that sparked something in him, a growing determination to define his own life, to strive for success that was truly his own. He remembered a conversation with his father, that there were many ways to be brave. Every defining moment, every decision, could be a testament to one's courage to take control and create a fulfilling life. When Sophie returned, her face flushed. It was as if she had emerged from a different world. "It's just my mom," she said with a nervous laugh, though Jake could see there was more uncertainty behind it. "She wants to talk about the scholarship." "Are you afraid?" Jake asked, expecting a defensive response, but instead Sophie hesitated, searching his eyes for understanding. "I've never felt this torn in my life," she admitted, vulnerability washing over her as she gestured toward the cattle grazing in the distance. "It's as if I'm being asked to choose between two lives, and I don't know how to balance the weight of either one." That was it, the very crux of their shared ordeal. "What if we tried to figure it out together?" Jake suggested, his words far more steady than the tremor twisting within him. "You don't have to face this alone." Sophie looked at him as though he had illuminated something hidden. "What do you mean? I'm not just a part of your past, your present matters to me too. I want to work through this to help each other grow." The air between them felt charged again, but this time it was pregnant with possibility. Sophie took a step closer. "You're right. I can't keep holding back from either of us." In that moment, Jake realized his path forward wasn't only about letting go, it was also about redefining what they could be, together. Hence, the fear that had knotted in his gut began to loosen its grip. As they stood together in the waning light, Jake felt a new courage stir within him. But confidence alone wouldn't be enough. He needed a plan, and if he truly wanted to keep moving forward, that plan had to begin now. With the adrenaline of newfound determination coursing through him, he took a deep breath and made a decision. "I have an idea that might help both of us." Sophie tilted her head, a spark igniting in her eyes. "What's that?" Jake hesitated for a moment, weighing his words, understanding this might change their course irrevocably. "Let's find out what it takes for both of us to pursue our dreams together." He watched her expression shift from curiosity to intrigue, but before she could respond, his phone buzzed in his pocket. With an anxious glance at her, he pulled it out to see who was messaging him this time. His pulse quickened as he anticipated the possibilities, fearing it could be news that might once again shatter the fragile balance they had just started to establish. Sophie's eyes twinkled with cautious reassurance as she leaned in closer. But tension hung thick in the air, a tight storm waiting to break. What revelation awaited him on the other end? Jake's heartbeat quickened, misunderstanding colliding with excitement. It was time to confront everything, starting with whatever tough question lay waiting in the shadows of that message. Jake's fingers trembled as he glanced at his phone screen. The stark message format felt ominous. "We need to talk about your future." His heart sank. It was from Taylor, his boss, the owner of the ranch. He took a breath, bracing himself for the impending conversation. "What's wrong?" Sophie asked, her voice slicing through his thoughts like a ray of sunlight breaking the gloom. "It's just my boss." The words tasted bitter as they left his mouth. "I think I might be in trouble. Or maybe I'm getting fired." "Jake, you just took a step back into your potential with me. This can't be the end." Her voice was steady, laced with encouragement, and surprisingly, that emboldened him. He looked her straight in the eye, feeling the weight of that connection grounding him. "What if it is? What if I've poured everything into this job and I'm about to lose it?" Sophie's expression softened and she stepped closer. "Then we'll handle it together. You were talking about pursuing your dreams. This may be the moment you need." Her words ignited something within him, an ember of defiance he never knew he possessed. Maybe losing a job wouldn't mean losing everything he had worked toward. Maybe it would be a catalyst for something greater. Deciding to face the matter head-on, he stepped back from Sophie and called Taylor back. Anticipation coiled in his stomach, both terrifying and exhilarating. He imagined a future where he was in control, pursuing his goals instead of being tethered to an uncertain job. "Hey, it's me," Jake said when Taylor picked up. "I saw your message. What's going on? Can you come to the office? We need to discuss the upcoming changes on the ranch. It directly affects your role." The voice on the other end was firm, laying out the stakes that had Jake's thoughts racing. Managing a ranch was chaotic, but the truth was that Jake had all but dedicated his life to this enterprise. "Sure, I can do that. I'll be there in a few." The call ended abruptly, leaving a hollow silence in its wake. Sophie stood watching him, a mixture of encouragement and concern etched across her features. "You okay?" she asked softly. "I don't know," he admitted. "But I have to find out." As he trudged toward the office, he felt the ground shift beneath him. Jake's eyes darted toward the sprawling land that offered both comfort and confinement. He had placated himself with the belief that he was on a trajectory, but now it all felt like a charade. What if this meeting unraveled everything? While fear nagged at him, he began to consider something else. What if it didn't? What if it opened doors he had yet to imagine? Entering the office, he found Taylor reviewing documents, her face drawn in concentration. She looked up as he stepped inside and gestured for him to sit. "Thanks for coming, Jake. I have some tough news." The shifting in his stomach grew heavier, and Jake settled into the chair, determined to face whatever came next. "In light of recent problems with the weather and production, we're enforcing cuts on payroll. I'm sorry, but you'll need to take a reduction in hours." A wave of relief washed over him. It wasn't a firing. It was a setback, one that he could navigate. As he processed the news, however, another thought pressed at the edges of his mind. He could use the decrease in hours to pursue something else, something he had put off for too long. "Can I take this time to work on my own projects? Focus on other ventures?" The words sailed out before he could rethink them. Taylor's brows knitted slightly as she considered his question. "As long as the hours are manageable, I don't see any issue. Just let me know once you've sorted it out." Jake felt an electrifying sense of empowerment bloom inside him. This was a chance to explore the path he had long sidelined. He could devote time to his own aspirations while still keeping a stable foundation underfoot. Leaving the office, Jake's heart raced with possibility. Sophie was waiting outside, and he barely contained his excitement. "I'm still here," Sophie said, eyes narrowing with anticipation. "I didn't lose my job outright," Jake replied, uninhibited by the usual restrictions he would impose on himself. "But I can take this time and work toward something greater." He explained the new arrangement to her, and he watched as her expression transformed into one of pride. "But there's another project in my mind," he continued. "It could be what we need, what we both need." His voice tinged with intensity, realizing the gravity of what he was about to propose. "We should think about starting something together, a partnership of sorts akin to building a brand showcasing what we've both learned." Sophie's eyes widened, a mix of shock and intrigue dancing across her features. But before she could respond, he knew that they stood at the precipice of a transformative collaboration, one that held the potential to change their futures irrevocably. "Let's map this out," Jake said, enthusiasm glimmering in his eyes. "But let's not just talk. Let's act." He could feel the gears of fate shifting, setting them on a course where the stakes had never been higher for both of them. What awaited them in this new journey? Secrets yet to be uncovered hung like mist in the air, tantalizingly close yet just out of reach. Jake's mind buzzed with anticipation as he and Sophie sat together at her kitchen table, the late afternoon light filtering through the window and casting warm shadows across the wooden surface. They had 2 hours to design a plan that felt not just necessary but vital for their futures. "So, what do you envision?" Sophie prompted, her notebook poised, pen ready. "Something grounded in authenticity," Jake replied, dipping into a reservoir of ideas. "We know this land, the culture of ranching. We both have stories and skills people connect with." He paused, allowing the weight of his thoughts to settle. I want to share that. It's time to create a platform for our voices. Sophie nodded, energy pulsing between them, but Jake could sense a flicker of uncertainty behind her enthusiasm. But where do we start? We can't just throw together an idea and hope it sticks. True, but starting is the key, he said. We can host workshops, teach people about ranching, share our expertise, all while promoting sustainable farming practices. He could see the spark ignite in Sophie's eyes. We could build a community around it. Taking a deep breath, Jake leaned forward, conviction solidifying in his chest. It's about resurgence, Sophie. We're not just selling a product, we're building a movement. Sophie shifted slightly, contemplating his words. But what if it fails? What if it's all for nothing? Her apprehension was palpable, and for a moment Jake felt the familiar claws of doubt scratching at his resolve. What if he was overstepping again, miscalculating the risk? But he quickly silenced those thoughts. This was precisely the kind of moment he had wanted to embrace. Failure isn't the end, it's another lesson. Besides, we have each other, he said, his tone earnest. This is about growth, both personally and professionally. Whatever happens, we'll learn from it. Sophie maintained eye contact, and slowly, her expression shifted from uncertainty to consideration. Okay, what do we need to get started? Jake outlined a plan. Crafting an online presence, utilizing social media, drawing in potential customers through informative blogs and videos. We could even consider a pop-up experience on the ranch. That's something unique that tourists would flock to. As they fleshed out ideas, Jake felt a wave of excitement flooding through him, pushing away any lingering doubts. Even as they worked, pieces of his previous life began to fall away. The fear of losing a stable paycheck dulled by the thrill of creating something new. Hours slipped by unnoticed as ideas flowed freely, and Jake found himself revealing aspects of his persona he had long kept at bay. He felt liberated, energized. Sophie's laughter filled the space between their deep conversations, and he felt a sense of camaraderie swell. This was the partnership he had wanted to forge, not just with business in mind, but rooted in genuine mutual support. Eventually, fatigue washed over them, and they leaned back looking at the sprawling notes they had created. We need a name that speaks to what we're doing, Sophie said, tapping the pen against her lip. Let's brainstorm, Jake suggested, unearthing the flicker of eagerness that had sparked this journey. But as they began tossing names back and forth, unexpected thoughts loomed in the back of Jake's mind. He felt a stirring sense of foreboding mixed with eagerness. The weight of taking the leap started to dissipate and morph into anxiety. What would happen when the excitement wore off? Would he have the fortitude to face the obstacles ahead? Financial instability, rival interests, possibly the failure of their shared dream. What if we include our personal stories? Jake suggested, shaking off the creeping doubt. We should be the face of this, share our experiences, so it's not just another business, it's us. As planning gave way to more profound ideas about their identities, he could sense that the atmosphere shifted, crackling with possibility, but hidden slivers of trepidation clawed at him, leaving him to question if he could sustain this momentum through any fallout once they ventured into the world beyond their plans. Would the connection they had fostered in this limited space be enough to propel them through the hurdles they were destined to face? As night descended, and the walls seemed to close in around them, he felt the pressing weight of that uncertainty hovering ominously above. Let's keep this rolling, Jake said, a renewed intensity to his tone. He glanced towards the door where the night lay just outside as if it beckoned. But we need to be ready for whatever comes next. What if we face challenges we never anticipated? Jake realized that the essence of their journey was just beginning. The time had come to face not only the uncertainties of their ambitions, but the truest depths of their own fortitude. What awaited them in the shadows beyond the light was nothing short of transformational. As the night enveloped Sophie's kitchen, Jake stood up, pacing along the edge of the table. The initial spark of ambition was now tempered by the weight of reality closing in around them. He glanced at the notes, their chaotic scribbles reflecting the whirlwind of thoughts colliding in his mind. How do we even know people will care? Sophie's voice cut through the silence. the line of uncertainty resurfacing. We could end up investing all this time and money only to have it flop. Jake felt that familiar hollowness in his stomach. It was a thought he had tried to push aside. The fear of failure gnawed at him like a relentless tenant. But as he moved, there was also a burgeoning energy. It was raw, fueled by a mix of desperation and determination. We know our stuff. We're passionate. That's something people connect with, he said, anchoring his thoughts to the foundation they were building. If we can show that, if we can stick to our story, then there's something here worth fighting for. But is passion enough? Sophie challenged, her eyes narrowing with skepticism. Passion doesn't pay bills, Jake. We have to be realistic. Realistic. The word settled heavily in the air between them, and for a brief moment Jake faltered. He wanted to argue, to convince her that their shared dreams were valid, yet he also understood where she was coming from. He felt the pressure of the world outside, the specter of failure looming larger than ever. Squeezing his eyes shut, Jake visualized the ranch, the vast open sky and golden fields stretching infinitely before them. He had loved this land since he was a boy, but it had never felt truly like his. Now the walls of self-doubt were starting to crumble. He couldn't let another moment of fear override his need to carve out his own identity. I can see us at markets, hosting events, working with local schools. People want to learn. They're curious about where their food comes from, about authentic experiences, he said, determination swelling in his voice. It's more than just a business. It's about creating a meaningful connection, taking back the narrative of who we are. A flicker of interest sparked in Sophie's eyes, and for the first time, the fear began to dissipate just a little. Do you really think we can do it? Jake paused and discerned the mixture of hope and fear in her expression. I think we have to try. Sophie nodded slowly, her pen dancing over the page again, capturing his words as if they were fragile threads deserving of attention. With each new idea, an electric buzz filled the air, the essence of potential. But beneath it lurked the predator of doubt, gnashing its teeth, ready to pounce. As they crafted their plan, Jake felt more empowered, yet moments of hesitation intertwined with bursts of creativity. He couldn't shake the notion that every stroke of success would demand even greater resilience. They discussed budget preparations and marketing strategies, injecting spontaneity into their mundane concerns. Each practical discussion, while necessary, felt like a tether to the ground, weighing down their wild dreams. Eventually, they stepped outside for a breath of fresh, magnificent night air. The stars dotted the sky, and Jake stood there, keenly aware of the difference between potential and realization. What's next? Sophie asked, her breath billowing in the chill night. Next, we need to foster our voice online, to grow a following. The more we share, the more people will listen, Jake replied, the night's embrace offering him a semblance of clarity. But we also need a strategy. We can't just wait for people to come to us, we need to reach out, connect meaningfully, Sophie countered, picking up on his enthusiasm. Jake candidly considered her point. This partnership, this shared dream, demanded teamwork, action, and unwavering commitment. Every step of their evolving project required him not only to lead, but to remain flexible, to recognize when their original visions needed adjustments. As the discussions ebbed and flowed, a powerful realization washed over him. To succeed, they would need more than just passion. They would have to confront their deepest fears and challenge every doubt that threatened to undermine their journey. In the silence that followed, the gravity of that thought pressed heavily on Jake's shoulders. The shadows of uncertainty swirled around them, ready to pounce at the slightest falter. We're going to have difficult conversations with ourselves, he finally said, the resolve in his voice steadied with clarity. We need to confront what holds us back, even if that means facing uncomfortable truths. Sophie nodded, her gaze intense and thoughtful. Then let's prepare ourselves, because the journey is going to test us in ways we can't yet imagine. The enormity of their task lay ahead, a mountain of psychological challenges with peaks they hadn't yet seen. As they stood together under the vast expanse of stars, Jake felt both the thrill of adventure igniting the spark in his chest, and the anxiety of uncharted territory waiting to unfold. but a vibrant sense of purpose surged within him. "Here's to us," he said, lifting an imaginary glass. "May we uncover the strength we didn't know we had." Their laughter mingled with the night air, but beneath the levity lay an unspoken truth, that the path ahead was cloaked in shadows waiting to be illuminated by their courage. Jake took a deep breath, the weight of their reality settling in his chest. The challenges they would soon confront might either break them or forge them into the partners and pioneers they aspired to become. The time had come to face their fears head-on. Little did they know, what they would uncover about themselves would change everything. As Jake turned to enter the house, he felt the tension deepening. The journey was only just beginning, and the shadows skimming the edges of their idealism were poised to challenge everything they believed. The following morning, the sun cast a warm golden hue across the landscape, infusing Jake's thoughts with clarity as he brewed coffee. He felt a strange sense of calm, a distant echo of his ambitions refracting through the early light. The spark from last night still lingered, but now it felt more like a flame, a fire igniting his purpose rather than a flickering illusion. He meticulously organized their notes on the kitchen table, a tactile representation of their ideas. Each word spoke of ambition, but there were still too many unanswered questions lingering at the edges, taunting him like a dark cloud that refused to dissipate. He needed a solid plan, one that allowed for flexibility while ensuring commitment. Jake heard footsteps trailing behind him. He turned to find Sophie, her hair slightly tousled but her eyes brimming with determination. "I've been thinking," she began, yawning as she settled into her chair, "about how we can get our message out there." "Good. We need more than just passion, we need a strategy that resonates," Jake replied, invigorated by her enthusiasm. Gazing out the window, Jake felt the pulse of the ranch, the pulse of their dreams. He recalled how people gravitated toward stories. There was something about honesty and vulnerability that drew connection closer. Perhaps this was their way forward. "What we really need is a personal touch," he articulated slowly, envisioning their approach. "We should share our struggles, our trials. People appreciate authenticity." Sophie nodded, frowning slightly. "But how do we present that without sounding helpless?" That stumped him. Could they showcase their vulnerabilities while also conveying resilience? It was a tricky balance, and he felt himself teetering on the edge of that uncertainty. "What about our backgrounds?" he said, an idea forming. "We each have experiences that can shape how we're perceived. What if we shared why the ranch means so much to us, our connection to the land, our reasons for wanting to start this journey?" Sophie's expression shifted, curiosity sparking in her eyes. "We can create content, videos, blogs. People love stories and honesty." "Exactly. We can humanize this process," Jake added, excitement bubbling within him. "But it means digging deep, being real. If we shy away from the tough parts, what will differentiate us?" Jake swallowed hard. He was better at placing himself in the spotlight, yet the thought of revealing his insecurities made his stomach twist. But if they were going to succeed, they needed to forge a connection that transcended mere business. They would be sharing their lives, stripping away facades and embracing authenticity. "Maybe we can start small," Sophie suggested, her brow furrowing in thought. "Just a simple introduction video where we share why this matters. The ranch is more than a business, it's about our lives. It's a story worth telling." The room buzzed with energetic possibilities, and an unfamiliar confidence washed over Jake. Deep down, he wanted to be the architect of something meaningful, not just for themselves, but for others. As plans unfurled, a realization struck him. The path was not just about overcoming obstacles, but recognizing the uncomfortable truths that shaped them. With every shared story, they would need to confront and embrace their complex family histories, failures, and the very real doubts that loomed over them. "Let's draft an outline of what we want to share," he said, his heart racing with purpose. "In each video, we can weave in personal anecdotes and reflect on how they informed our journey." "Okay, but we need to be cautious too," Sophie warned. "Being too raw can make people uncomfortable. There's a fine line between vulnerability and unsettling." Jake thought for a moment. "True," he admitted, "but leaning into discomfort can be powerful. If we can elicit emotion and prove to our audience that we're persevering, it humanizes our fight. As they got to work, the weight of their reliance on one another began to shape their partnership. Each line they wrote, each decision made, was not merely about business, it demanded mutual growth. They were not just co-founders, but comrades facing a daunting terrain. They spent the afternoon drafting their ideas, but as the shadows lengthened, Jake's insecurities began to creep back in. What if their story wasn't compelling enough? What if people dismissed them as just another agribusiness? Jake? Sophie's voice interrupted his spiraling thoughts. Yeah? There's no perfect way to do this, she said gently, as if sensing his doubt. Let's take a leap, embrace the messiness. The fear is a part of it. A part of it. That resonated deeply with Jake, grounding his conflicting feelings. All right, let's build something that's real, he said, a new resolve solidifying in his core. They agreed to film a short introductory video the following day. But as Jake settled into bed that night, a mix of nerves and excitement gripped him. He closed his eyes, feeling the weight of their mission settle over him like a familiar blanket. But amidst that comfort loomed the question that ripped through the silence of his mind. Could he truly bare his soul? And if he did, would it make them stronger or expose their vulnerabilities unprotected? Tomorrow held the potential for revelation, and a nagging fear lingered that his defenses would falter in the openness they aimed to share. As he drifted off to sleep, the shadows of uncertainty loomed larger, promising confrontation just around the corner. The dawn broke with a silence that felt almost sacred, its stillness pressing down on Jake as he prepared for the day ahead. He had barely slept, his mind racing with thoughts of the video they would shoot. Each moment felt amplified, every breath laden with expectations he had layered upon himself. He could already sense the weight of revealing his vulnerabilities pressing against his chest like a physical barrier. As he sipped his coffee, the familiar aroma inexplicably gained a bitter edge. The fear of judgment loomed large in his mind, a specter that taunted him with thoughts of inadequacy. What if his story wasn't compelling enough? What if Sophie's was the only one that resonated? He clamped his eyes shut, trying to erase those thoughts. Doubt had a way of creeping into the crevices of ambition, pushing him further from the light of his purpose. Taking a deep breath, he scanned the kitchen table, where their notes lay like a testament to their hard work. There was no going back. They were committed now. A plan was unfolding, a mixture of personal struggle and shared goals. But piecing together their pain into a public narrative felt like exposing an open wound. Nonetheless, he reminded himself that authenticity could be the difference between fading into obscurity and forging a meaningful connection. Sophie arrived, her demeanor bright and focused. "I've set up the camera outside for our first video," she said, a hint of excitement dancing in her voice. "Are you ready?" The burgeoning nerves twisted inside Jake. Could readiness even coexist with vulnerability? He looked at Sophie, finding her energy contagious yet contrasting sharply with his internal turmoil. "Let's just be ourselves," she coaxed, seemingly reading his hesitation. "It's about sharing our stories, real, raw, and honest." The moment felt climactic, as if everything they had prepared for hinged upon this singular action. What if he failed to convey the depth of his connection to the ranch? What if instead of drawing people in, he somehow pushed them away? He had never backed down from a challenge before, and yet this felt different. This challenge ventured deep into the soul, demanding not just his best, but his very essence. "Okay, let's do it," Jake finally said, revealing an unexpected resolve. The sun cast a warm glow across his face as they moved outside, illuminating the aspects of the ranch that had become synonymous with their dreams. Here, draped in nature's embrace, they would craft their narrative. As Sophie stood beside him, Jake reached for her hand, their fingers weaving together like the roots of the ranch beneath their feet. He felt an inexplicable surge of strength, reminding him how their partnership had always been the heart of their ambitions. They were in this together. When the camera began rolling, an initial wave of uncertainty washed over him. Sophie began with her story, her honesty flowing with ease, each word weaving a fabric of familiarity. She spoke of family traditions, the emotional weight of transitioning from urban life to the ranch, and the hopes that had blossomed alongside the land. Jake's turn came and his throat clenched as he dove into his own narrative. He spoke of failures, family expectations, and how they had shaped him, sometimes constrictively. "I feared I wouldn't measure up," he admitted, his vulnerability spilling into the open. "But this place, this ranch, it's become a canvas for my dreams. Every fault line in my history is what makes me me." In that moment of truth, something inside Jake shifted. It wasn't just about sharing weakness, it was transformative. He saw the subtle changes in Sophie's expression, the way her eyes lit up with understanding and compassion. The world beyond the lens might see their struggles, but he began to realize that their stories were not just a burden. They were profound, unifying experiences. As they concluded the recording, a sense of exhilaration rushed through him. They hadn't just faced resistance, they had confronted their past, emerging not only unscathed, but emboldened. But as they reviewed the footage, Jake's initial sense of triumph was ambushed by nagging thoughts of his raw admission. Would others resonate with his struggles or merely dismiss them as personal failures? He wanted connection, not pity. Sophie noticed his shift, furrowing her brows. "What's wrong?" "I don't know," he confessed, the tension creeping back. "What if this isn't enough? What if we're making ourselves too vulnerable?" In the silence that followed, Jake sensed that their true challenge had only begun. The room buzzed with possibilities, yet a shadow lingered, one of fear, of facing not just external judgment but their internal struggles head-on. Tomorrow they planned to share their video publicly, and the thought of baring their souls to the world felt equal parts liberating and terrifying. As Jake sat in the growing twilight, he realized this journey would demand more than just courage. It would call for relentless honesty about the shadows that followed them. The moment was here to burst the confines of their past, yet he couldn't shake the looming fear that unraveling his truths would teeter on the edge of catastrophe. But what if, through that unraveling, they discovered an even greater resilience waiting to emerge? Jake awoke the next day to an atmosphere thick with expectancy, like the air before a summer storm. Despite the soft morning light streaming through his window, the internal cloud of anxiety lingered. He had barely slept, a restless night consumed by visions of judgment, disappointment, and relentless self-doubt. What if their story didn't resonate at all? What if he was met with an empty silence where he had envisioned deep connections? These thoughts gnawed at him, pushing his confidence into a fraying thread. As he prepared breakfast, the familiar kitchen felt less inviting, its walls closing in on him with memories of hope overshadowed by the fear of failure. He took measured breaths, trying to ward off the creeping tension. This wasn't just about creating a video. It was about stripping down the walls that had confined him for years. He was ready to face the world, yet the question loomed. Was the world ready to receive him? Sophie arrived, her spirit infectious as she cheerfully recounted her excitement about the video's potential impact. "Today's the day we break free," she exclaimed, her enthusiasm unwavering. Jake admired her, yet found it difficult to let his own apprehensions dissolve in the buoyancy of her optimism. "Yeah, today's the day," he echoed weakly, uneasy with the profound realization that breaking free meant confronting not only the fears outside but the ones that lived within, buried in past experiences and notions of self-worth. The juxtaposition of their energies felt like a pendulum swinging, and he was caught in its arc of uncertainty. "You know, we'll be fine," Sophie assured him, intercepting his far-off gaze. Her understanding was palpable, yet he could not shake the feeling that he was standing on the precipice of a cliff, gazing down into the unknown. With each passing moment, the anxiety transformed into a turbulent energy, urging him toward action. They headed outside, setting up the equipment in the same natural tapestry where they had first rehearsed their narratives. This time, however, it felt different, much more intimidating. The trees, usually a sanctuary, now seemed to loom, watching their every move. As the camera rolled, Jake felt the collective weight of expectation, not just from the viewers they would soon face, but from the version of himself he aspired to portray. Sophie began again, spinning her tale with an ease he envied. Her ability to embrace vulnerability sparked something deep within him, something that urged him to shed his skin of fear. Yet, as he prepared to speak, an icy grip of doubt formed around him. "I can't do it," he mumbled, halting the flow of Sophie's monologue. The admission left a bitter taste. "Jake, you can. Just breathe, and remember why we're doing this." Her voice, warm and encouraging, pierced through his doubts. "This is about your journey, your growth. It's not about perfection, about—" Those simple words resonated. He had spent a lifetime seeking the unattainable ideal, focusing too much on the fear of not measuring up. Another breath, another moment of vulnerability. This time, he felt bolstered by her faith in him. When he finally faced the camera, a sense of liberation washed over him. "What you're about to see is more than just a story," he began, his steady voice gaining strength. "It's an amalgamation of struggles that we carry, shadows we confront daily. For a long time I let my past dictate my worth. But standing here today, it doesn't have to define me anymore." As Jake spoke, the words flowed. He delved deeper than he thought he could, articulating experiences of pain interspersed with flashes of hope. The warmth of vulnerability enveloped him, transforming the anxiety into a raw energy that felt freeing. Sophie's presence beside him became a pillar. The connection they shared elongated and deepened as he unraveled more of himself. The camera captured not just their narratives, but the real-time evolution of their partnership. Viewers would see resilience echoed in their expressions, the bond forged in their trials. After wrapping up, Jake faced Sophie, adrenaline coursing through his veins. "How do you feel?" she asked, a glimmer of pride in her eyes. "I feel different. Like I shed a skin that was suffocating me," he admitted, a smile creeping across his face. The relief was palpable, yet uncertainty lingered. But will they understand? Reflecting on the videos yet to come, he realized this was merely the beginning. There was power in vulnerability, but it also exposed them to scrutiny, leaving them wide open for judgment. Rooms of silent viewers loomed ahead, ready to ingest their stories as they would consume a meal. Some would savor, and others might spit it back out. Amidst that fear lay a revelation. He was on the verge of discovering not just how to express his truth but potentially how to find healing in it. As he stepped back inside the ranch, the story still echoed in his mind and heart. What lay ahead was a raw exploration of their identities, and he couldn't help but wonder how this journey would transform him, both professionally and personally. But under that glimmer of hope remained a disquieting thought. What if their truth wasn't enough for the world waiting beyond their secluded ranch? Tomorrow would be the day they pressed publish. And as Jake lay down that night, a mix of anticipation and dread coursed through him, punctuated by a single question. Would this plunge into vulnerability unveil a deeper strength, or expose them to vulnerability beyond what they had imagined? The morning light streamed through the windows, illuminating the kitchen where Jake and Sophie had first mapped out their dreams. Today, however, felt different. Today was the day they would leap into the unknown and share their story with the world. Sophie was already bustling about, filling the kettle with water as she hummed a tune that hinted at her excitement. Jake stood by the window, looking out at the ranch that had cradled their hopes and fears over the last few weeks. His heart thudded in his chest, anticipation mixed with nerves coursing through him. "Are you ready, Jake?" Sophie's voice broke through his thoughts, and she turned her eyes to him, eager, yet calm. "Ready as I'll ever be," he replied, though his stomach churned. He had faced many challenges before, but this felt monumental. It was not just exposing their plans, it was a raw unveiling of their truths, their struggles, and the deep-seated fears that had held them back for far too long. They settled in front of the camera once more, wiring the equipment with a feeling of trepidation that hung thickly in the air. Sophie was the first to speak, her warmth radiating like sunlight. Slowly and deliberately, her words encapsulated what had brought them here, weaving a tapestry of aspirations grounded in personal history. Jake watched her with admiration, her strength amplifying his resolve. When it was his turn, he took a deep breath, the weight of vulnerability resting heavy on his shoulders. "This isn't just a business. It's our way of reclaiming our narratives," he said, finding comfort as he spoke. "For too long I let my past dictate my worth, but it's time to redefine that." With every word, he peeled back the layers of past disappointments and self-doubt. No longer was he merely a rancher tethered to the land. Today, he was a storyteller, confronting the insecurities that had stifled his growth. He looked at Sophie. Her nod of encouragement propelled him forward. "I feared I would never be enough," he continued. "But with Sophie, I feel a sense of belonging I've never felt before. Together, we are embarking on a journey not just of business, but of personal transformation." When they finished recording, an exhilarating rush washed over Jake. The act of sharing had been cathartic, an intentional carving out of space for their dreams to thrive. Sophie turned off the camera, her eyes sparkling. "That was incredible. You really opened up." "Thanks," he replied, a thrill of pride surging through him. He had taken a daring step, and in doing so, he found a voice that felt both new and familiar. But as the exhilaration settled, reality crept in. What if their vulnerability was met with silence? What if they were reaching out to an indifferent audience? Sophie seemed to sense his anxiety, squeezing his hand. "Whatever happens, we've already shifted something inside us, right? We're not slaves to our fears anymore." As they prepared to upload the video, Jake noticed the shift in his perspective. The once looming fears were giving way to newfound confidence. Even if their journey met skepticism, he acknowledged that they were sharing richness in authenticity, something beyond mere business. Finally, hitting publish felt like casting a stone into a vast ocean, and he could only wait to see the ripples it would create. The tension between their aspirations and their realities hung heavy in the air. But as the minutes ticked by, something enlightening occurred. The feedback began rolling in, affirmation dancing across the screen. Their story resonated. Comments of love, support, and shared experiences flooded in, assuring Jake that vulnerability was indeed a bridge, not a barrier. He and Sophie reveled in the connection with others who resonated with their journey. "Look at this," Sophie laughed, pointing to the screen. "People want to engage with us. This is only the beginning." Jake felt a rush of energy, waves of warmth cascading through him. He had transformed from a solitary figure striving amidst shadows to a partner embracing vulnerability, and together, they were crafting a movement. As the days flowed into weeks, the newfound momentum fueled their venture. They began hosting workshops on sustainable ranching practices, drawing visitors keen to learn from their authentic experiences. The camaraderie they built with attendees transcended mere business transactions. It was a rich tapestry of community that nourished their souls. Alongside blossoming professional fulfillment, personal growth enveloped Jake like a warm embrace. He found joy in sharing stories, crafting a narrative that was no longer shackled by a fear of judgment. Instead, he reveled in the truth of who he was and chose to align his identity with courage. Soon after, an important local publication featured them in a piece spotlighting innovative farming methods combined with storytelling. Jake beamed with pride, greeted by surprise and admiration from his peers. Recognition from the community felt like validation of their efforts, proof that they were forging a path connecting their roots to their dreams. Together, Jake and Sophie had accomplished more than what they initially perceived as success. They shared glimmers of hope with every person they interacted with, creating a ripple effect that began to touch lives far beyond their own. As the sun set upon the expanse of their ranch one evening, Jake felt the golden warmth wash over him. He looked out over the land that had witnessed his evolution. The journey from isolation to connection was finally realized. He turned to Sophie, whose smile reflected the joy they had cultivated together. "We've come a long way," he mused. "From fear to courage, from silence to stories." "Exactly," Sophie replied, her voice steady and sure. "And it all began with overcoming what held us back. We proved to ourselves that we are enough." In that moment of realization, Jake felt a profound sense of accomplishment ripple through him. Solid confidence rooted in authenticity and genuine fulfillment. They had achieved not only recognition, but understood who they were and what they could become together. Their journey was a testament to growth, their stories intertwining like the expansive roots of the ranch they cherished. As dusk ushered in new possibilities, Jake silently committed to his continuous evolution, an undertaking far richer than any fleeting success. Now it's your turn. You need to subscribe now to ensure you don't miss the next exclusive emotional stories of personal transformations. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm's hunger for authentic journeys. And comment your reactions and theories about Jake and Sophie's awe-inspiring evolution. Don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to witness this incredible conclusion to a story of overcoming fear and embracing vulnerability. Show your unwavering support today.